Greetings, fellow painters. Trahane here. Today we paint Zombie Hero Hulk for your Marvel Zombies board game. Once we get them all painted up exactly the way we want them, we're going to break out the airbrush and risk ruining the entire thing by adding a red/orange backlight glow to the model. We're going to start with the matte black rattle can primed miniature, because I lack imagination. I wonder if Rust-Oleum sponsors miniature painting videos. I really need to look into that. We are going to start by grabbing some black-green Pro Acryl by Monument Hobbies and get to work base coating all of Hulk's skin with this color. We're going to apply this paint in a few layers, the first of which is going to be thinned down quite a bit with water so that the deep shadows and recesses will still read as very black. On subsequent layers, we're going to use less water in the mix so that the paint is more opaque and we can really build up this black-green color. I'm freely painting all of Hulk's rashes and blister areas in this dark green paint so that I don't have to start from black when I go to paint them yellow. However, I'm avoiding the deep wound areas because those are going to get a brown base coat over the black later. The second coat of paint is more work than the first because I'm taking care not to apply any of the paint in the areas that I want to remain in the deepest shadow. I'm painting Hulk as if the natural light will be coming from his right side, so I'm being extra careful on the left side of Hulk, which will be his dark side, to just paint the raised areas of the muscles and leave a decent dark separation between the muscles. Moving on, we're going to grab some Army Green by the Army Painter for the mid-tone color of the skin. I chose this color because it's a very desaturated green, and I think that's going to work well for the decayed look or undead look of Hulk's skin that we're going for. I think if I had to do it again, I would have started out with this color plus some matte black mixed in for the base coat, rather than going with Monument Hobbies black green. The black green by Monument Hobbies it's an excellent paint. I just think it's a little too lively for the look that we're going for here. I also wanted the skin of Zombie Hulk to look noticeably different from the skin of Superhero Hulk, and I feel that the black green by Monument Hobbies is a little too close to the angel green that I used for Superhero Hulk. Fortunately, this Army Green is different enough from the greens that I was using on Superhero Hulk to make it look quite a bit different from that model. And this is how it looks after one coat of the Army Green. With that first coat of Army Green, I really covered most of the muscle area on Hulk, with the exception of the areas facing more directly towards his left, where I left more of that black-green showing, because I do want that in deep shadow. With this second coat of Army Green, I'm starting to build up the highlight areas. I'm being more selective about where I place it, allowing the color to transition gradually from the dark green up to what's eventually going to be a light green highlight. And I'm going to apply almost no additional Army Green to Hulk's lower left arm because I want that to remain fairly dark. Next, I'm going to take the Army Green and thin it down to a glaze consistency and start smoothing out the transitions between the black green and the Army Green. And since more paint will be deposited at the end of each stroke, I make sure to start each stroke in the black green area and finish in the Army Green area. So I am basically drawing the paint towards the light source. Next, we will follow the natural highlighting progression to some Necrotic Flesh by Army Painter, which I actually think is a little on the nose for what we're trying to accomplish here. I really think I could have kept a simpler palette by simply using the Army Green, matte black, and a pale yellow for the entire skin of this Zombie Hulk. I think I'm going to give that 3-color palette a shot when I paint up Zombie Lizard for the Sinister 6 expansion. Anyway, while I'm applying these highlights of Necrotic Flesh, I am drawing the paint towards the light once again so that it deposits more paint where I want the skin to be the brightest. And of course, I will apply this paint in several thin passes, covering less and less area with each pass. And I will work on focusing the brightest highlights on the upper right side of the model. And since Hulk has a basic green as a foundation of his skin color, he's really starting to take on that iconic green zombie look, which is something that won't be duplicated on many of the other zombie heroes. We will apply our final highlights by adding ice yellow to the mix, and this will be applied sparingly, only to the areas that we want to appear brightest, such as the right side of Hulk's face, as well as the upper right side of Hulk's body surrounding his face and head. Initially, this ice yellow will be mixed in with the Army Green to apply a gradual transition to the highest highlights, which will culminate with just a few dots of the ice yellow. After I'm happy with the highlights, I will go back to the Army Green at a glaze consistency and use this to smooth the blend between the ice yellow and the Army Green. And then the final step is to take some pure ice yellow and just dot in some final highlights. With Hulk's skin all finished up, we'll move on to Oak Brown by the Army Painter and use this as a base coat for the open wounds on Hulk's body. This brown will serve as a nice foundation for the final red color that we're going to apply later. Before we finish the wounds with the blood effect, we're going to go to work with some leather brown on Hulk's festering blisters. The leather brown will be diluted down to a glazed consistency, and we will start wide of the blisters and draw the paint towards the blister from the surrounding skin areas. In this way, the leather brown will be darkest right around the blister area and will diminish in intensity as it gets further away from the blisters. We will then dab some ice yellow on the top of all of Hulk's blisters, and while we have it on the brush, we will go ahead and apply some to Hulk's teeth. Next up, we'll take some red wash by Vallejo and apply it liberally directly over the blistered areas. This red wash will blend into the leather brown that we applied earlier, but will not cover all of it. And now we get back to those open wounds with some glistening blood by Army Painter. But before you grab a brush and start going crazy, please note that I did highlight some of the raised areas within those wounds with ice yellow prior to applying the glistening blood.
And while we have the glistening blood on the palette, we will take some titanium white, dot it into the eye sockets before applying the glistening blood over the top of it. The glistening blood is translucent enough that we will not dilute it before applying it over the titanium white. For the mouth, we'll use Grimoire Purple and Warlock Purple by Army Painter. We will coat the entire inside of the mouth with Grimoire Purple before applying a few highlights just to the tongue with Warlock Purple. The entirety of Hulk's pants are going to get a coat of Alien Purple. As usual, we will apply just one coat of this to the darkest areas and then build up additional coats in the areas of the pants that we want to be the brightest. We will then start building up the highlights on Hulk's pants, first with Purple by Vallejo applied in several thin layers. Then we will switch to a mix of Purple and Ice Yellow, both by Vallejo, to build up the highlights even further. Ice Yellow will be mixed in as a final highlight color for every part of this model. It will also be used as a final highlight color for every other model in this set. This will add some cohesion to the pieces when they're on the board, making it appear that they're all reacting to the same light source. I'm going to use Ash Gray by the Army Painter to lay down the foundation for some highlights in Hulk's hair, applied just to the top and sides of Hulk's head. I will then switch to Deep Blue by Army Painter, thin down to a glazed consistency, and apply a thin layer over those Ash Gray highlights. For the base of the model, we will use Dark Stone, Ash Gray, and Uniform Gray, all by the Army Painter, applied in separate layers over all the stone on the model's base. The dark stone will be applied as a solid base coat, followed by Uniform Gray as a mid-tone, and then Ash Gray as a final highlight. I thought that clear orange over the oak brown would be a really cool color for the iron girder. I applied the clear orange with stippling and short strokes to give the girder a weathered look. The clear orange is extremely translucent, which allows a lot of the brown to still show through that first applied coat. I repeated this process with the clear orange, focusing more and more on the folds and creases of the girder as well as edge highlights. I continued the process of highlighting with a mix of ice yellow and clear orange, and I'm now focusing almost solely on the areas facing to the model's right, as well as a final highlight to some of the bends and creases on the girder. While this iron girder does end up looking pretty cool, in hindsight I probably should have used a different color scheme for it. Because the backlight effect that I apply later in the process has a very orange glow to it, the iron girder does not interact very well with it. Perhaps a more traditional blue steel girder would have been more appropriate. The clear orange gets applied to the helmets on the base of the miniature as well. This is a rough application just to ease the transition between the oak brown and the demonic yellow that we're going to apply next. If you notice, I did apply the oak brown to the entire base of the model, and that's because I had originally intended to avoid the gray rock look and go with more natural brown looking rocks, but then after looking at the concept art, I realized that they are actually gray rocks. The demonic yellow will be applied roughly over the entirety of the helmets, allowing some of the brown and clear orange to show through. Then, a second coat will be applied to the front of the helmets where we want it to be the brightest. Finally, gunmetal metallic paint by Army Painter will be added to the helmet's visor and to the breathing filters. And with that, you can call your painting done, or you can hang out with me for just one more minute while we apply a simple orange backlight effect to the model. To initially map out the orange glow effect, we're going to use Crimson Ink by Daler Rowney and an airbrush and spray the model from below on its back and left side. This goes very quickly, and the crimson application is the only time that we will use the airbrush for this entire paint job. The brushwork from here on out is a simple process as well. We're going to take some clear orange by Vallejo and start applying it to all of the areas of the model that we have just spray painted red. We're going to start each stroke within the red area such that we do not cover all of the red, and pull the paint at a downward angle towards where we imagine that the light source would be. The final step is to repeat the process with some ice yellow added to the clear orange.
We will apply this mix to a smaller area of each section of the model where we had previously placed the orange, and end at a spot closest to where we imagine the light source to be. And with that, I'd like to thank you so much for watching this video tutorial on painting Zombie Hero Hulk for your Marvel Zombies board game.